Hi, I'm Chef Julia Dunaway, and today I'm going to be making some red lentil soup. This is one of those really comforting dishes that I really love to always have available in the freezer, because on a cold day, if I look in the freezer and I see a container of this soup, it just makes me happy. And of all the recipes I've posted over the past few years, this one seems to be so popular with people. It's like something that everybody likes. So I'm happy to make it and have it here for people to be able to find easily so that you can make it anytime you want. And it's just a simple red lentil soup. This one was inspired actually by a trip to La Jolla, California. And even though I had been making red lentil soup for a long time, I went to a little Greek restaurant with my husband and they served us a bowl of red lentil soup. And it was better than mine. It was so good. And I actually asked the waiter, I said, well, how do you make this red lentil soup? And he said, as a matter of fact, I made the soup. And he said, and he just started saying, I put this in it, and that, this, and then I wrote it down. And then when I got home, I made my own version of it. So I improved what I had already been making and made it even better. So this is my favorite version of red lentil soup. And it starts with cooking some of the onions and the celery and carrots. And I know you might think this is a little odd, but I'm using a skillet to heat up all these vegetables, to saute the vegetables. And I'm going to use a pot to cook the soup. This is a 4.5 quart pot. However, because the surface area is a lot bigger in my skillet, and because when you're eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, it's important to me to develop a lot of flavor in the vegetables, I'd rather saute everything in the skillet and transfer it to the pot. So that's my way of doing it, right or wrong. That's just how I do it. And I cook and show people the way I cook. It may not be the way everybody does it, but that's okay. So I'm gonna start with an onion. I already have the onion peeled and a half of this large onion because I made something earlier today that called for onion. So I need to use this one. Seems like everything starts with an onion, everything good. So I've got the onion cut in half. I leave the end attached so that it's easier to chop. Make a couple of horizontal cuts. And then I just make I rotate the onion, and then I just make some cuts down the onion on its little lines. The onion kind of has its own natural lines. And then it chops it right into little 4-inch pieces. So that's very handy and convenient. There you have your cup of onion without very much effort. And then also, I keep a little scrap bowl here, and I'm saving my scraps of vegetables because what I do is I use them for stock. So why waste all these nice vegetable scraps if we can put them to another use? So get that in the pan. Get those going, and it's a dry pan. You know, I use a dry pan because I don't use oil. And how does that work? People sometimes will say, well, how can you cook without oil? Well, vegetables have their own amount of water, so you can cook a lot of things without oil. It just let the water in the vegetable release, and of course there's sugars in vegetables and they caramelize, and there you have it. You don't really need oil. And if you get used to eating food that doesn't have oil in it, it surprisingly starts to become more natural and tastes better, believe it or not. Okay, I've got a couple ribs of celery, and I'm going to save the celery. That comes in really handy. And I'm just going to cut these into the same thing, like a 4-inch dice. I cut them into just some sticks of celery, and then it's easy to dice them that way. And the onion's doing fine. It's not burning. Nothing terrible is happening. People get really, sometimes they're afraid when you start saying, oh, just throw the food in the pan and let it cook. And then I hear people say, but it will stick, it will burn. No, it really won't, if you have a good pan especially. This pan is a Calphalon skillet, which is non-stick, which, you know, if you take good care of your pans, they'll continue to be non-stick. And I'm just gonna throw this in here. I have one of those little tools that you can scrape vegetables up off the cutting board and put them in the pan. I don't have it here. It's in the other part of the house. All right, so I've got my celery and onions, and nothing is sticking. And I have it on kind of medium heat, so it's not on high heat. It's kind of on medium-ish, almost medium-low. I'll turn it up a tiny bit. Now I'm going to add a couple of carrots. I've peeled the carrots. I really like to get the carrots that have the stems attached because they usually are sweeter and fresher. So if you can find them with all the leaves and the stems attached, get those, because sometimes the carrots in the bag have been in that bag for a long time, to the point where you can look at the tops of the carrots and find they're all kind of brown and unappealing looking. So I'm just going to cut the carrots, just kind of like I did the celery, into little sticks, probably a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to just cut the sticks into little diced pieces. It's kind of hard to cut them when they're rolling around, but I'm working on it. Okay, so I've got one. So see how that just made it easy to cut them into cubes, because the sticks cut right into cubes. Or diced, 1/4 inch dice is really the size I'm going for. And on my celery and onions, they look fine. I'll stir them around from time to time. I see they're starting to get a little brown. But what I like about using my skillet is I can spread them out in one single layer, and then the chances of them browning faster are increased. That's just the way I like to do it, and it works for me. But if you want to brown your vegetables in your skillet or your pot, then it's fine, especially if you're using a bigger pot. You know, if you're using like a 7-quart pot, there's plenty of surface space on that. But the little 4-quart, 4.5-quart pot, it doesn't really have that much surface area. So that's why I like to use a skillet. All right, so I got my carrot. And this is one of those things that, to me, it's relaxing and fun to chop vegetables. To just, get some vegetables out and start chopping. I don't have a problem with it. Sometimes people will tell me that they hate chopping and they don't want to be bothered with chopping a bunch of vegetables. And I always think, well, I find it therapeutic and relaxing. We're going to put in a couple of garlic cloves. Oh, and the garlic, if you just smash it and cut off the very hard end, then the peel comes right off. And I'll save that in my little bowl of broth scraps. And then smashing the garlic not only peels the skin off, but it kind of gets the garlic a little bit easier to cut. It's already sort of broken down, so then it's easier to mince up. It doesn't take very long. You don't have to hassle with it too long. And the garlic doesn't have to be super finely minced. We're just kind of rough chopping it. Because it's a soup, it's going to cook down. But the garlic is a key component of the soup. I like 2 cloves of garlic. Some people like more. Some people like less. But I happen to like garlic. And then the last, well, no, we still have bell pepper. We'll put in a jalapeno or a serrano chili. You don't have to put that in. Not everybody likes things really hot. I'm sort of cutting around the outer sides of the pepper and leaving the inside, because that kind of gets the hottest part out of there. And then I'm just doing the same thing, cutting it into some sticks. And then I can just rotate them and cut them into little pieces. And I'll make these a little bit smaller because they are hot peppers. So we don't want giant chunks of hot peppers in our soup, although some people wouldn't mind. I like this with the serrano chili, but I didn't have any of those left. I just had the big jalapeno, which is fine. And then I'm going to stir this around. And it's really starting to cook nicely. I have not added any liquid. I haven't had to add water. I haven't had to add anything. And that's one of the things that I've seen people do when we're adopting the whole food plant-based no oil way of cooking. I've had a lot of people say that, oh, well, you could saute with water. And what they do is they'll put a lot of water in their pan right when they get started. But it's not necessary. And what that does, it doesn't really allow the vegetables to develop their little caramelization by developing some color. It just kind of prematurely cooks them, and it more or less just boils the vegetables. And then they don't have that flavor, because what we're after is this really rich flavor. I'm going to cut 2 sides of this red bell pepper off. If you just cut the sides of the bell pepper, then you don't have to mess with trying to get out all the seeds and the inside part. And then we could also, whoops, we won't use that piece. It just fell on the floor. We'll cut another piece. You know, remember Julia Child? I wasn't named after her, but people are always kind of telling me that isn't it fortunate that my name is Julia, because the famous chef Julia Child. But that reminded me of her because she was known for dropping things. I think one time she dropped a chicken, but she didn't let it fluster her. She didn't let it, you know, throw her off course. She just kept on going. What are you going to do? I'll pick up that pepper later, wash it, and use it for something else. But, you know, I don't even know where it's at. Somewhere. Oh. All right, so all our vegetables are in. We have onions, carrots, celery, garlic, jalapenos, and red bell pepper. And it smells terrific in here. And you can see, I know that my camera is kind of far away, but I think you can see all the colors are beautiful. And then here's another thing that I like to do, because, you know, I've had time for the flavors to develop. Now what I like to do is take a little bit of my vegetable broth, a couple tablespoons. I'll turn the heat down a tiny bit, and then I'm going to cover it. And by covering it just for a couple minutes, it will cook the onions and the peppers and everything, and it kind of softens them and cooks them down very quickly. And one thing I noticed when we're cooking with the no oil way, sometimes it takes longer for things to cook without having the addition of the oil. So by covering it with a little liquid, that seems to speed things up. So while that's going, we'll get our lentils ready, and we'll put them in the pot that we're going to be using to cook the actual soup. So I have my lentils here, and red lentils are sold in the grocery stores everywhere now. This is from the bulk section of my supermarket, and they're also called, these are organic red split lentils by Sunridge Farms, and that was what was in a local grocery store. And I have 2 cups of lentils. And what I did was I put them in my strainer and rinsed them well. Okay? Lentils are notoriously hard to rinse, because if you put them in a regular colander, they'll fall through the holes. So you have to use something like a fine strainer, and look how the lentils kind of formed into a big clump. That's okay, it doesn't hurt anything. And then we're going to add, I'm putting the pan over here, so I'm going to put the camera where you can see it a little bit better. So I have this pot here, I'm going to turn that burner on, and I'm going to add the broth. I have 4 cups of vegetable broth, and I have 2 cups of water. I'm going to just add those in there and let this start cooking. And you can use store-bought vegetable broth if you want, if you can find one that you like, or you can make your own. It's pretty easy to make your own, because if you use a lot of plant-based foods, you know, like every day it seems like I'm making something that has onions and carrots and celery. So it's pretty easy for me to, you know, start piling up those ingredients in my bowl. And then as it fills up, you can kind of smash it down and then kind of get a nice container. So, you know, I'll do that. But then sometimes if you're in a hurry and you don't have time to make your own, you can just go to the grocery store and get some kind of, you know, carton of vegetable stock. And there's a couple that I really like. There are some that I don't really care for. So the ones I don't like a lot of times are the low sodium ones, because sometimes they'll have, like, you know, fruit juice or something in, because they don't have sodium, and that just, to me, that makes it taste kind of strange. All right, so I've got this. I'm going to put the lid on to bring that up to temperature. And then I'm going to get my potato ready. So that was one of the additions that the chef in La Jolla had in his. He had a potato. So this is just a russet potato. I peeled it earlier and I had it soaking in water so that it wouldn't turn brown. So the addition of the potato is kind of nice because that just adds another nice texture. The little, you know, cube potatoes. Something about that was a nice addition to the lentil soup. So I'm cutting the potatoes into planks. I call them planks. And then I'll dice them into the same size as everything else. And the easiest way to do that is once they're in planks, then I can just kind of stack them up and then easily cut them into similar sized pieces. And then I'm going to add them to the soup. In the meantime, the vegetables, it's fine that they're cooking because I want them to cook a little bit more to get that nice, you know, soft texture. It's funny, you might think that if you just put your vegetables in your soup water and boil them for a long time, they'll just cook, but it doesn't always cook to the right consistency, and also the flavor. Like the raw onion may continue to maintain kind of a raw onion taste even though you've boiled it. I know it's strange, but trust me, I've made those mistakes early on where my food just did not, when I first stopped using oil and started making plant-based food, some of the things I made just had this very strange, like a raw onion and garlic taste that I did not like. So then once I started playing around with it, it got a lot better. Okay, so this is plenty. These vegetables have cooked long enough, so I'm going to move this over here. And I'll turn this burner off. Turn this one on a little bit higher. And then I'm going to put all these in this soup pot. So you could see that these have cooked. Can't really see them, but I'll show you. You can see that they've cooked down. They're soft, they're translucent, and they're really going to make this soup taste great. And I think that's one of the things I like about it is it's full, not just a lentil soup, but it has a lot of vegetables in it. Really good tasting vegetables. So then I can put the potatoes in. And I'm going to bring it to a boil and then let it simmer. It only takes about 30 minutes. That's another good thing about lentils, red lentils especially. Even brown lentils will cook pretty fast, but red lentils will cook for sure in 30 minutes. This will be done. And you know, it tastes better the next day, but at least this part we know will be done. Let's add our spices. We're going to be adding 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. And if you like cumin, you can add more. I'm starting with 1/4 teaspoon. And then, you know, I'll taste it later and I might add a little bit more. And then I'm going to add a little cayenne pepper. You know, cayenne pepper is one of those things, be careful, because if you overdo it, everybody will be mad at you because it will be inedible. So cayenne pepper is one of those things that you can easily overdo. And then we're going to add a cup of tomato sauce, 8 ounces of tomato sauce. This tomato sauce can be like canned tomato sauce, but my tomato sauce was actually, I made something yesterday that called for canned tomatoes, but I only used a few of them. So I had this leftover canned tomatoes. So I just blitzed them in my blender, and that way, you know, I had the canned tomatoes ready to use and I didn't have to open up a can of tomato sauce. So what we're going to do is let this come to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer. And that's going to take a little bit, but I'll come back when it's ready to eat. The soup is ready. We turn it off. I can tell it's ready. There's been enough time, but I can also tell it's ready because the lentils have cooked down until they're very, very soft. And it doesn't take long. It only took 30 minutes. So now all we have to do is put it in our serving bowl. And some people like to take out some of the soup and puree it so that part of it is smooth and part of it has little, you know, recognizable pieces of lentil. Whatever you like. I like to just leave it like this. So how do we serve it? Well, we can serve it with some parsley or cilantro, just a little bit. Some people like to use scallions. I love scallions on top of my soup, so I'll put a few scallions on here. That one's a little big. And then another nice touch is to put a squeeze of lemon. So we'll put a little squeeze of lemon I personally like pepper, black pepper, freshly ground. I have some habanero, smoky habanero sauce, which is really good. It's from a company called Subiaco. Well, it's not really a company. It's Subiaco Abbey in Arkansas. And the monks there make a limited amount of this smoked habanero sauce, and they sell it from the Abbey. So good. And then we could also put a little sea salt in here. I did not add salt to the soup, and I usually do, so I'm going to go ahead and add about a half a teaspoon of salt to the soup because I like it to have that little bit of salt to it. It doesn't need a lot, but you know, half a teaspoon is not that much. You can add more if you like it saltier, or just add the salt when you get ready to eat it. So there you have it. We have our beautiful, delicious red lentil soup, and it's got nice, you can still see the potatoes. You can see the lentils. It's delicious. I know that's an overused word, but really that's my best way to describe it. It really is. It has all the different flavors. It's so comforting, and it makes a lot. So what I do is I eat it the first day. Maybe the second day I'll have a little for lunch, and then I just freeze it in individual portions. Then whenever I want it, it's there for me. So I hope you make red lentil soup. If you like this recipe, I have plenty more. So like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.